Hey everyone, Ruff here, bringing you another video for hotkey.com. This video is going to introduce the standard gasless fast expand. The standard gasless fast expand is extremely standard for any Terran player against any matchup, whether it be fighting against another Terran opponent, a Zerg opponent, or a Protoss opponent. Now, the standard gasless FE is more well known against Protoss opponents. So I'm going to show you basically a very basic introduction of the build and how to execute the build in the build order. So in this part of the video, I'm going to explain the build order and what to do in this kind of situation. So right now, you're just basically producing SCVs the entire time. Eventually, you're going to start your first supply depot at about 10, 11 supply. Now this is still very standard for any kind of opening. You're always going to get that first supply depot. And you're either going to go for either a gas or a barracks, but when you're doing the gasless expand, you're obviously going to be going for the barracks first. So as soon as the SCV is done, you're going to drop your barracks. The good thing about this build is that you have Terran players normally get a very high economic advantage because once they get that second command center, they're able to start producing even more mules and SCVs. So this is actually why a lot of pro gamers prefer this build against any kind of race matchup. Normally what you want to do with this build is you want to build that barracks primarily because you don't know if you're going to get cheesed or not. So if you're going to get cheesed, you'll at least be able to produce Marines. Also, for any kind of scouts that come in your base, you're also going to want to have that Marine out. Sometimes if the enemy is scouting late, you can deny that kind of worker to get in your base to see what you're doing if you're doing a gasless expand, which will actually promote the Protoss player to do a different kind of build rather than try to cheese. The thing is, with this kind of build, you're actually prone to being cheesed very often. Now, normally when you want to put your command center down after you get your barracks up right after the supply depot is around 1419 or 1519. I prefer to go with the 1419 just because it's easy to execute if you don't go for your second supply depot right away. I usually like to get the supply depot after the command center goes down. That way you can get that command center down a lot quicker, about 20 seconds quicker. In this situation, it does delay like making another Marine, but you really don't need that many Marines right in the beginning if you're not already getting cheesed by an opponent. So as you can see here, before you even drop down any other structures after that second supply depot, you want to go with a bunker. You want that bunker because Protoss units are extremely strong. So if they send one Zealot ahead and you don't have that many Marines, you can run into some trouble, maybe lose a couple SCVs. Same with the Stalker. If a Stalker comes a little too early, normally Stalkers would come around when you have 3 or 4 Marines. So if you only have 3 or 4 Marines and you're fighting a Zealot and a Stalker, which is usually standard for any kind of Protoss player, you can run into a lot of issues with losing a lot of units. So you definitely want to get that bunker down right away. Now the thing about the gasless expand is that as soon as your command center goes down, you have a few options on what you want to do. In this game, I decided to go for a double gas right after my command center went down. That way I could tech up faster and go for bio medevacs. Now, normally a lot of Terran players don't do this against Protoss opponents. The reason is because a lot of Protoss opponents like to be aggressive when they see a gasless expand. But I decided to take the gamble in this game to go ahead and tech up. Now, if you're playing an opponent that you think is rather cheesy, the very standard is to go for the 3 barracks first and then get your double gas. But in this instance, I went for the barracks first, double gas, and then the other 2 barracks, making it 3 barracks. So lots of times you'll see a lot of pro gamers go with the 4 barracks as well. That way they can produce a lot more Marines quicker. And then there's also the quick third into 5 barracks, which you don't see very often. But that is actually very deadly if you do a good timing attack which can be brought up in some other videos later on. In this instance, I'm going to show you what to do against Zerg players when you're FEing. So here I'm just opening the same way. You know, you're going to get your 9, or you're going to get your 10, 11 supply, and then you're going to go ahead and get your barracks at like 12, 19. But here, you notice that I'm putting down a second supply depot right away. You always want to do this against Zerg, unlike Protoss, because you want to get your wall off as fast as possible, just in case they are going to cheese you. So in this instance, I get my supply depot down and my barracks down. And usually when the supply depot and barracks finish at the same time, both your SCVs are done building, and you can send both SCVs to kind of put on some bunker pressure while you're doing your GaslessFE. So in this instance, you get to see me do a little bit of bunker pressure against this player. But in this situation, the Zerg is actually going to go for a cheese instead. So I don't actually get to get much bunker pressure off, as you can see. So I notice that there's no hatchery, so I know that there's going to be Zerglings coming soon. So the best thing to do in this situation is to always get that wall off as quick as possible. So I'm being rather cheesy here, but this opponent knows how to drone drill, as you can see. So he's drone drilling my bunkers there, and he's going to bust out any minute now. So while that's happening, normally I would be putting down my command center right now, but because he's going for a cheese, I decided to opt for a third supply depot to get that wall off immediately, because without that wall off, I would have lost this game. So here I go ahead and get my command center now and start building my other supply depot. Like I said, the standard time for getting your barracks is at 12, 19. The standard time for your command center is usually around 14, 15, 19. In this situation, when you put down a second supply depot, it's going to be 15, 19. So here when you see an opponent that is going to cheese, you always want to put down bunkers, especially against Zerg players. And what you do is if you decide to go for any kind of tech build, whether it's going for mech play or any kind of air play against Zerg right away, that one barracks that you have should always consistently be making Marines. And you should always consistently be putting down some bunkers just in case you do get cheesed. So in this instance, I am just building one bunker at a time and making Marines one at a time just to go ahead and tech up. And by doing this, you are actually able to stop any kind of Zerg cheese in the beginning, whether it's kind of like a roach or either just a Baneling Zergling all in. Now you see what I'm doing here at my ramp? I'm actually making a second wall off. Now the reason you want to make a second wall off is because if they do get into your first layer of your base, into your natural, you have another option to go ahead and pull back behind your into your main base without the Zerg getting in. So you always want to kind of do that when you're doing any kind of GaslessFE. So here I'm just going to show you what happens when an opponent does try to cheese you. If you can actually read what your opponent is doing, you always want to play safe and get those bunkers up. And you know, just prepare whenever you're doing any kind of GaslessFE, because GaslessFEs are always known to be prone for cheese by your opponent. So in this situation, I'm showing another match against a Zerg player where you're going to try to put on some kind of pressure. Now, sometimes a lot of players like to put down the bunkers first before even getting the command center. In this situation, I'm actually going to put down the command center first because the Zerg is going to be ready for any kind of bunker play. So when you're going to send your SCVs and the Zerg does see it, normally you want to fade your SCVs back and kind of trick them. Hopefully they pull their drones back to their mineral line. But in this situation, my opponent doesn't do that. So here, when I try to go for any kind of bunker cheese, don't try to be hasty. Put down your command center when you have 400 if they're prepared, and just kind of micro around those drones when they're trying to defend. Because if you micro good enough, you will actually be able to get your bunkers down. So as you can see here, I'm kind of just microing, and then because the Zerg is out of position after killing 2 drones, I'm able to get some bunkers down. Now in MLG maps, you're not able to put down those bunkers in those locations. So normally you want to put those bunkers in different locations, like behind the gas line, or squeeze a marine between a choke point and put the two bunkers there so that your marine is stuck behind the bunkers. But on ladder maps, you can actually pull this off. Now, it's not easy to pull off, as you can see in both videos, that both Zerg players are actually able to stop it, usually at pro level play. But here, whenever you see that a Zerg has broken out of any kind of bunker pressure, you immediately need to pull your SCVs off the mineral line and get them to start working on finishing any kind of wall off that you have. It's extremely important to get that wall off, because if I didn't have that wall off now, all them Zerglings would be in your base and you wouldn't actually be able to stop it. So by doing this, the best thing about this gasless expand is you can go into any kind of play that you want. Whether you want to go bio, whether you want to go mech, or whether you want to go air. So in this instance, you'll see that I'm going to do some kind of air play by getting 4 gases right away. Normally, if you're going to go for any kind of bio play, you only stick to 1 gas after you get your command center out and just kind of get a lot of bio units out, whether it's Marauder Marines. And if you go for any kind of mech play, normally you want to go with 2 or 3 gases in the beginning. So as you can see, when you're doing a gasless expand, as soon as command center goes up, 1 gas, normally you want to stick to bio play, 2 gas if you want to do bio mech play, and 3 gas if you want to do mech play in general, and then 4 gas if you're going to go air play. So in this instance, I'm doing air play, as you can see here. But that's all I have to show about this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any more questions about any kind of gasless expand, let me know. All right, laters.